Hi guys. So for tonight's collab, I'm just doing a recording and focusing on some important aspects with regards to interviews. And the reason for that is obviously because you are going to be doing some interviews yourself. Now, I know that for all the introverts out there, the thought of actually having to sit with someone one-on-one and conduct an interview might be daunting. But whether you're studying psych or comms or English, being able to communicate and engage with people and talk to people, no matter what, it's important to make sure that you are able to sit with someone face to face and actually be able to talk to them to gain information and knowledge from them. I'm very sorry about the chick cheeping in the background, but they've decided to come and visit me while I do this recording for you guys. So, when we think of interviews, we generally break it down into three different types, that being face to face, telephone, and email. Now, obviously, with the way technology has shifted, these approaches have also changed, and we also can include WhatsApp as well as video calls, Skype, Teams. So, our options since COVID have really grown quite tremendously. And when we think about these alternative means of interviews, they don't necessarily all fall into the exact one that you would think. So, for example, a Teams or Skype meeting kind of is a mix of telephone and face to face, but more leaning towards face to face. Where voice notes and stuff, it's like a telephone interview. So, um, when we think about a face to face, in some instances, it's not physically possible to be face to face with someone sitting in the same room as them, but you're able to do a video call or a Teams meeting with your cameras on and get almost the same thing as if you are face to face with someone. So I'm just going to focus on the face-to-face aspect of the interviews because for your POE, you guys have got to conduct two face-to-face interviews. All right. So face-to-face is always first choice because it means that you can pick up so much more than just the words that are being said or typed or what have you. So you can learn through watching people's facial expressions, from seeing their surroundings, looking at their body language, and you're also able to build a rapport. You're able to build this relationship with the person you're interviewing, and it really does help to put them at ease, make them feel comfortable, and make them willing to open up and engage with you and be able to get the most out of the given situation. The other thing that's really great about face-to-face interviews is that you're able to ask follow-up questions, you're able to converse, and it doesn't feel so sterile and cold, and there isn't time for people to edit and break down and change their views and change their thoughts like you can when doing an email or a typed interview or like a telephone where people can just hang up on you. The idea here is that it actually gives you the opportunity to engage more. Hi, Luann. So I'm just chatting about face-to-face interviews. So no one else was on, so I'm just was doing a recording to chat about interviews and stuff. So please feel free to ask questions and chat to me while I'm talking. Let me know if there's anything you can think of. All right. The other thing is that when we look thinking about these face-to-face interviews, you also can get clarity, which your telephone or email interviews can't do. Um, because you're able to just get clarity, ask questions if you're not sure in something, and it just means you can get a lot more information out of a person. And what's also really interesting about face to face interviews is that you can go in expecting to do an interview on one chosen topic. You go in with all your questions written, you set, you know what this is all going to be about, and then you start chatting to the person and they are really interesting and there's a whole nother story behind them. And then you end up wanting to write a completely different story, which is just as valuable or even more valuable. So face to face is the best way to go. People can't ignore you. People can obviously always try to divert you and change things, but at the same time, we are more willing to talk to someone when we're stuck with them face to face. The other thing of this learning unit that it speaks about is things being on and off the record. Please just remember that that is a real, legit thing. It's not something that's just made up for the movies. So if someone says it's off the record, it means you cannot record it, you cannot quote that information, you cannot use that information in a written piece, but you have to then go find someone else who will be on the record. But always make sure you say to them, is this on the record again? Because otherwise it means your entire interview is worthless in terms of quotable pieces. And this is why we do interviews. It's to gain knowledge, gain information, and to make sure that we can actually quote people to use that information in the story, because our readers don't want to just read about your understanding and your interpretation as the journalist. They want the quotes from the people involved. So from the doctors, the lawyers, the person who's succeeded, the person who's done whatever. They want that information from them. Okay. So just think about this perspective, that you're able to really get the most out of face-to-face interviews. Just also when you're thinking about these face-to-face interviews, because you're going to be conducting them yourself for your PRE, think about slowing down your questions, giving the person time to answer, and just think about what you are trying to achieve at the end of the day in getting quotable, usable information. Because you don't want to do these interviews and not be able to use the information, because then it's a waste of time. And you guys do not have time to waste. So that's just the first thing in terms of face-to-face interviews. Viviane, have you got any questions with regards to interviews? Just before I move on to the next important aspect for this. Okay. All right, so the next thing I want you guys to be very aware of is that you've got two types of questions, open-ended and close-ended questions. The reason why we need to have a mix of these two types of questions is that they both have importance and relevance when, again, building this rapport or building a relationship with the person you're interviewing. So your open-ended questions are the questions that are quotable. So those are where there's a full, meaningful answer and actually give you depth. So it gives people the opportunity to give their say, give their understanding, talk to what is going on. But it obviously does take a lot more time, which, sometimes we don't have that kind of time. But then you also have to have a mix of your close-ended questions. So it's where they can give you a yes or no answer, a set date. It's where it's, just fact-based. It's not about the emotions. It's not about breaking down deeper meanings and what have you. It's just stuff at face value. So your close-ended questions often can be used to get people relaxed, get people opening up in terms of getting used to the question and answer process. And then your open-ended questions are the ones where they actually get the chance to speak and engage and have enough depth and actually get to elaborate and really tell their side of their story. Okay, so there are certain things that we've got to think about, like with the open-ended questions being ambiguous. So you've got to think about what people are saying. You've got to actually, if their answer is not quite easy to understand, you must break it down a bit more and get them to clarify. Again, it's all about this time And again, sometimes we don't have the time, but you guys have to conduct 8 to 10 minute interviews. So you've just got to think about the questions that you are needing to produce or to get information out of your interviewees that actually is going to help your stories at the end of the day. Okay. Any questions on those? Sorry about the chicks in the background. They do not want to leave me alone. I shoved them away, but they are mommy. Okay. So, how would I balance the interview to have enough open and close-ended questions without having the answers be long-winded in the open-ended questions? Okay, that's a very good question. So, depending on the person who you're interviewing, you're going to find a person is either going to be one of those people that give very long-winded, in-depth answers and they can kind of prattle on for a while. Otherwise, a lot of people generally tend to be a bit more reserved and won't speak as openly as others. But it's very much got to do with your wording and your questions and the way they're written. Because if, for one, you write a question with multiple parts to it, so tell me your name, your favorite hobby, and something else, you will get these long-winded answers where people will like go off track and what have you. So you need to think about your wording. You need to think about how someone can give an answer to one topic or one specific point that means that they can't go on a tangent for too long. And let's say if after a couple of minutes you can feel they're starting to go on a tangent, you can go, yes, okay, hold on, speaking on that point, and then you've interject and you can do a follow-up question or one of your other questions that can help bring them back. But that's why you've got to have that mix of your closed-ended as well, so that they don't think that every question needs to have these massively long answers. Okay, so sorry, I just saw your thing about the background noise. So if you find that you do mix in these closed-ended questions too, you'll find that people will generally respond with not giving answers that are too long. But if you word your questions correctly, it means they can only give one answer about one topic. So you've just got to be careful with that. But when you are doing your POE and you're writing your questions, you're welcome to send me one or two and I can tell you if you're on the right track. So does that answer your question? Cool. All right. Then the last thing that I just wanted to chat to everyone about tonight was the different types of interviews that we have. Okay. So that there's three types, that being funnel, tunnel, and trumpet. Okay. So these, while some people see these styles of interviews being outdated and what have you, we might not use these exact words in everyday media, but it's approaches that have kind of been ingrained into journalists over time. And that is, so your funnel is where you start with your broad, open-ended questions, you have clarifying questions, then you start to get more specified, more specific questions. So you start quite broad and then you start narrowing it down into questions that actually get someone to answer specific details. So you can either do this because you're needing them to fill in the gaps and they've missed important bits and pieces that you need them to answer. Or it could be because you're wanting to lull them into a false sense of security in what they write, what you are asking them, and then you start going with the hard-hitting questions that makes them feel a little bit uneasy and they answer even though they're not 100% sure, and so on and so forth. So funnel can be quite nice in your more investigative pieces where you're trying to delve into the deeper, more intense story that you want people to feel almost have a false sense of security, and then you're like, now you're going to get to the point of it. So I'm sure for your POEs, very few people are going to use funnel. I think most people are going to go with the trumpet approach. So this is really great, especially for magazine writing and anything where you're needing to deal with a topic that's a bit more intense. So let's say if you're talking to someone about women abuse and you're speaking to someone who's an abuse survivor, you would give them some narrow questions to start, getting used to the approach, getting them comfortable, and then you can go to those deeper questions where they feel they can open up and just get comfortable and feel they can actually talk to you about their issue or what they've been through. Do you think it's a good idea to start with a statement about the interview to give the interviewer an idea of where you're going? So, no, actually, you never want to lead the interviewee. So if you tell them what your intentions are, what you're going to be doing, or what you're trying to achieve, they could end up answering the questions to suit you rather than being truthful and giving you that information. So you never want to tell them the intentions behind it. You can always give them like a thing saying, thank you for your time. Please know this is just for the sake of a POE. This is not going to be published. So, and then start the interview, but never lead them into where it's going, because you plant that seed in their mind and they will then either knowingly or subconsciously will deliberately adjust their questions to suit what you are needing from them. And we never want that. We always want the truthful, honest answers. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. Last one that is important is your tunnel interview. This is where you are just gathering facts. So this is for like your hard news stories, where it is very much about getting your 5 Ws and H, who, what, where, when, why, and how. You're just trying to gather that information and repeat it out without, there's no depth needed, no over the top emotion, nothing like that. It's just about the facts that you're trying to gather and distribute out to the audience. So in most instances where time is working against the journalist and the interviewee, they'll just go for a straight tunnel where they can just gather as much information as possible, put it all together in the facts, and then write a story to just inform the public rather than help them to know the deeper side of the story, if that makes sense. Sorry about my dog. She just wanted to bat the other dog. Do you have any questions? Seems the chicks have many questions. All right. Sorry. A new puppy and an older dog make for a bad mix sometimes. All right. Well, then that's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for coming on.